Aaliyah, you
Yeah.
do you want to cue us up and let everybody know kind of like what we're talking about today? Because it's all your fault.
Sure, Lisa, just put me on the spot anytime. So I wasn't able to make the last call, but the call before we had ended on talking about how I felt that estrangement was more of letting go of control. And then Ruth kind of commented that she thought it was total control, taking over total control. And so that's where we're going to start today is just like, is it just letting go of control? Because in my perspective, it was like, I finally don't have to worry about what my mom's thinking. I just get to let go and focus on my own life and not worry about what how I was feeling and how she was stressing me out. And I was just like, letting go of that attachment felt really good for freedom in my life. And so, Ruth, what were you thinking? Or Jillian kind of agreed with Ruth when it
Yeah, I
was
think
total control.
I think there were I two things. I was thinking you didn't think you had any control in that relationship, so you were not letting your mom control you anymore. That's what you were letting go of.
Yeah.
So that was different than what I was thinking, because I was thinking um for you to let go of it was being in control. So there's really two different things, two different
I,
controls going on there.
right. Yeah, there's one of completely letting go and completely taking control. I was taking control of my own life because I felt like I was being heavily weighed down by the relationship I had with my mother and that she wasn't understanding my life choices or what I was doing. And I had to keep explaining myself or getting guilt trips that I moved away. And she was like, when are you coming to visit? When am I going to see you again? And it's weighing on someone who's in their 20s and just wants to explore life and party and have a lot of fun. And just so to me, I wanted, I guess, to take back control and let go of everything.
Yeah, and I
Okay,
know, like, go ahead, Lisa.
I just want to clarify something real quick there, Leah. So you said it being in your 20s. So you're talking about like the first time you estranged because now you're in your 30s, but you still think about that. So
I
is there
feel
now a difference with your age?
I think so. Well, maybe it doesn't have anything to do with age. Maybe it has to do with a lot of self work and a lot of realization in what I can control and what I can't control because I can only control what I do. I can't control how my mother talks to me or what she says or how she's feeling because she's completely entitled to how she's feeling and what she's going through because she's at a different stage in her life. And I think one of the biggest things is like just being able to realize that now where before I wasn't able to. Before I was just very needing to live my own life and not feel like I had to check in with anybody or anything like that. I just needed that sense of independence. And now I see how I love my mother no matter what. And even when I get frustrated, we had that talk, Lisa, that like there's only you can only control your relationship and how you want to help her transition into the end of her life. And I'd rather not get upset and just not talk to her. I'd rather have her in my life and manage it.
Can you describe managing it? Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah. Um, Picking up her phone calls. She'll probably call me 3 to 5 times a week and sometimes like 4 times in one day. And so when I say manage it, I know how much I have on my plate that day and I'm starting my own business and stuff. So I can only handle so much stress and emotions in a day. So on one of my lighter days, that's when I know I can initiate the phone call. I can call her when I have a little bit of space. And I've been very expressive over that. It's like, Mom, I'm not trying to ignore you, but I have a lot on my plate. So I will call you when I have space and time and energy to do it. So that's when I have to manage it that way. I can't pick up that every single phone call. I can't call her back every single time she calls. So when I say manage, it's typically a once a week call her, FaceTime her, chat with her, catch up. But then when it comes to the guilt trips and the like, are you ever coming back? Because I moved away, kind of, then I have to just be like, okay, I'm busy, or I gotta jump off, or, and that's what I mean when I have to manage it, because I can only feel so guilty for so long. And like, I love her, and of course I want to see her, but I have a lot going on. And so I would love for her to come. I've always invited. It's an open door, but it's like, I don't know. She hasn't come this way yet.
I do that with my mom still. I mean, and the guilt trip, I mean, it's still there. It's kind of weird. And she just turned 80. Like, and I'll ask her, well, have you heard from either of my two sisters? No, I don't hear from anybody ever. Nobody ever calls me ever. And then later, 5 minutes later in the conversation, she'll start telling me something about my little sister's kids. And I'm like, well, how did you know all this if you're never talking to her ever, never, ever, ever?
Right.
So yeah, that still goes on.
Yeah.
Jillian, do you want to comment on that?
I don't really have much to comment on, seeing as how I did just go like low contact again with my grandma for the same exact reason. I can't. She's very similar. Well, she's Aaliyah's mom. Like, she guilt trips me every single time that I talk to her, because I also moved away, and I have enough on my plate right now that I stopped answering her calls, because I can't. I already have enough guilt in my own life for trying to struggle through like what I'm already struggling through, that I can't continue to hear like how sad she is because I moved away, and how like lonely she is because I'm not there, and nobody ever talks to her yet. I know that everybody in our family still talks to you for the most part, like, be that rock for you, and I'm trying to figure out how to be that rock for myself. So like, this isn't being like completely estranged, but for now I haven't answered her calls in a month, because like I just don't have the mental capacity to do it. Like, I can't be what she needs me to be right now, and like I can't even be what I need me to be right now. So how am I gonna have you rely on me when I'm already relying on me? And like it's a complete role reversal, where like now I'm feeling parentified again, and I think that's very triggering for me, given like the things we've talked about in the past, and how difficult it's been for me to like separate myself from like parenting my own parent, into now like feeling like I have to parent my own grandma, or like take care of her. So I think, yeah, the guilt like also weighs on you, where it just becomes too much, where you're like, when do I, like, the boundaries have to be set in order for us to have that control, even if it's like completely letting go of control. I think it's not. I think like creating the boundary for us to be like, no, I'm sorry, like I can't fix you right now. I'm working on fixing myself. I'm working on starting something for myself. And right now it just really feels like I'm putting all my energy into fixing you and starting you, and it never ends. It feels like a black hole, and right now I just don't have enough matter to keep throwing into it.
Cheryl, can you relate to all of
Yeah,
this?
I love hearing this from you too, getting the perspective. I just think that it's such a case by case definition or understanding. Each estrangement case is so different and has its own nuances. For me, I can only speak from my own case, and it's, to me, it just, the estrangement and the total no contact, has a very vindictive feeling. It's a very punishing feeling. By telling others they can have no contact with me, and I don't feel or hear through that any work is being done on the other side. Whereas the work that I'm doing for myself is to get to know myself better, to understand things that wrong decisions I've done in the past. But coming to the realization that we're all humans, we're all making mistakes, we all make wrong decisions. We move on. We make better decisions as we get older and older and older. But there's other estrangements, semi-estrangements that I have in my life, every now and then. And we're able to avoid going the no contact. It's either me telling somebody, you hurt my feelings, I can't have this friendship anymore, or a family member. Let's take some time off. Let's take some space, work on it, and then, have conversations later on. And I just feel that the parents that have this strict no contact imposed on them, we don't know if we'll ever get the chance to try and fix it, to try and discuss it, work it out. I love hearing from Aaliyah and Jillian how it really, at this point, they're just taking steps back, just taking steps back and reassessing. And if something is too much at the time, you kind of let the person know. And, like Aaliyah said, she's managing.
I have a question for Aaliyah and Jillian. Because Cheryl mentioned that, I believe, if I'm hearing it correctly, Cheryl, that your daughter has encouraged other people to go no contact with you. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. And not to mention my name. And if they do, then they will be no contact to her.
Yeah. So Aaliyah and Jillian, are you doing that? I'm curious if it's a cross generations or if it's a specific thing like Cheryl says in her case. Maybe it is.
I think, like, if we go back in time a little bit, when Jillian and I were, when she was in no contact with her mother, I felt like I couldn't talk to Lynn because I felt like I had to choose sides.
Okay.
I don't think Jillian ever asked me to choose sides or anything like that. I just felt like I was betraying her by still talking to my sister.
Okay.
And so I don't know. I know she never asked me, but back then it was like I had to choose a side, and I don't know if it's generations or what. I know, like, eventually I let go of that, but at first I really thought like it was something that I had to do to show that I was loyal or faithful to Jillian and not her mom.
Okay.
I also think like mine was such an extreme circumstance, like with what her husband did,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
so that one, I would say like my situation is not the model for what we could base this off of, simply because, yeah, it did feel like a betrayal, like when some people would like talk to her, but then it finally got to the point where it was like, I don't want my mom to be talked to about me, simply because I know that she's trying to find information and I'm not ready to be in that situation yet. Like, I don't want my mom to know if I'm doing well or not, simply because like I'm not ready. And I know like people who are talking to her, I had to block out a lot of family members because there's this thing called like, and I know this is maybe like triggering to some, but like there's this thing such as flying monkeys that like people will send like your estranged parent will send after you in order to be like, oh, well, you should just talk to them again. Like, they miss you. In my circumstance, I was like, what happened to me was so extreme that if you contact me again about this, I will be blocking you.
Yeah.
Because I'm 15 freaking years old and I don't have the mental capacity, much like right now. Like, I'm 29 years old and I'm feeling like a 15-year-old again, being like, I don't have the mental capacity right now. So just bringing it back to that, like, I never asked for people to pick sides, but I did ask for them to respect my boundaries. And if they couldn't respect my boundaries, I respect myself enough to respect them for you.
I've never heard the term monkeys. Is that from Wizard of Oz?
Yeah. It's like a term for like, people, and like this is a very malignant example of it, but like people who will come after you in order to be like, oh, well, you should just talk to them again. They really miss you or they didn't mean what they did. And in my case, because like I said, it's so extreme, so it should definitely not be set as like the bar example. But when people would say that, it's like, well, she did mean what she did because she actively chose what happened. So, once again, to reiterate for the third time, this is not the shining example of what the difference in estrangement is. This is the like lowest bar of estrangement, and like, don't talk to me about my mom because what she did was literally life-threatening. So, or what she chose was life-threatening. So no, I never asked for sides to be picked, but I did ask for my respect on my privacy. And if that wasn't met, then sayonara, you know?
I never sent out flying monkeys, but my daughter thinks I have.
Why?
Mhm.
Why does she think that?
I, well, I guess because maybe people are saying something, but it isn't because I never ask anybody to get involved in anything. And if I checked in with mutual people that we've known as she was growing up and just was asking them about them, I never brought my daughter's name into it. But she would hear that I was checking in with other people, just say, thinking about you. Um, because they would tell her, I guess, because she would then say to me, stop trying to get information. I never even brought her name up, but she
Mm.
just had that. She was just sure that was my intention, and that was not my intention.
Totally understand. And yeah, Cheryl and I were just talking a few days ago about how, like, when you go to public events where people know you as a parent and your kids,
Yeah.
everybody just, when you're a parent, everyone asks about your kids.
Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah.
very normal. So I think that could also be interpreted as flying monkeys getting released if you say something that
Mhm.
was inappropriate without even you knowing perhaps what was inappropriate.
And they can definitely be like unintentional. And I think they could be like highly misinterpreted by the person, like by children, especially like depending on the level of anger. Like my mom was actively seeking to like find my place of employment to come talk to me, or like
Mhm.
she showed up at my graduation, and like, you know, that to me is a difference in like between like, oh, you're showing up where the community knows you as a mom, and it's like, oh no, but I hope she's doing well. And then it's like, well, why don't you talk to your mom? Like, mom, stop asking about me. Where you didn't, and you're like, Jesus Christ, like, okay, I didn't, but have your opinions. So I think there's a huge difference in much like every case of estrangement. Like, there's going to be levels of anger, there's going to be differences in like what is perceived, because like Cheryl and I have gotten into before, like this is perception, you know, and I think being able to see that side and like understand that, like, don't internalize that, kind of like where we're coming back, let's bring it back full circle to kind of like the comments that people will say. Don't internalize that, because that's people working on their own hurt. And like, especially like, in my opinion, children who are estranged are still working through whatever hurt brought them to this. And even hearing about like, oh, well, she mentioned this. And then it's like reigniting the wound all over again, where, you know, sure, you may have made this amount of progress in the healing, but it doesn't mean that you're completely healed and able to like hear about your parent. Like hearing about my mom at her funeral and hearing all the children that she helped, when I was like, what the hell? Like, what about this child? Your actual one? Are you so for real right now? It hurt. And it was like inflaming. Like, sure, I'm glad that she helped all these other children who were really in need. And like, maybe I had a part to do with that because she wanted to help other children. But even hearing about the good that she did, I was like, you don't know the real her. And that was like me regressing in it.
We hear about that in the parental communities, like some parents who just want to love a child are considering adoption. You know, those we that's really a common topic in those communities, actually. And I get it. You know, you still have nurturing that you want to do and give, and you want it to go somewhere. I understand that. I
Like
have a question. Oh, go ahead, Cheryl.
like what kind of happened to me. One example was, you know, I just opened my heart up so much more. I mean, I just have so much love to give, and was able to repair a relationship with one of my stepdaughters when she had her child. And now that I think of her like another daughter. And I don't know if that would have been possible if I hadn't been doing work on myself and just becoming more aware of my feelings as well. Um, it doesn't take away from, you know, the love I have for either of my daughters, but I kind of see it as a blessing that I was able to repair a relationship and had a chance to repair this relationship.
Have a chance.
Have a chance, right?
Yeah, because when the no contact rule is the final line in the sand that gets drawn in the sand, then you just don't feel like you have that opportunity. So I have a question on that, but go ahead.
I just want to say, sorry for cutting you off. And I told you I'm the proponent because she keeps wanting to estrange from either her mom and her sister or both at the same time. And I'm the one that is like, please don't try to work on it. Try to keep the lines of communication open. Just if you need to take a step back, just make it, don't make it a finite. But I just keep saying, please don't do the 100% no contact. And she, so far it's been working, and they've really been listening to what she has to say and what her triggers are.
So I have a question regarding that. So Aaliyah and Jillian. So Aaliyah, you said you're now managing the relationship. You don't want to go no contact. There's times that you could because you have a ton of stuff going on in your life. Your mom's calling you 4 times a day. And I mean, that's a lot for anybody. And Jillian just said, gosh, I'm just trying to keep my head above water. I don't have time. I mean, I don't know how long it took you to respond back to my email, several days. And that's why I was like, hey, just check in. I want to make sure you're doing okay. And you're like, yes. I'm working 3 jobs and it's just crazy. So now let's assume that you both have gone no contact with a parent. A year goes by, 2 years, 5 years goes by, whatever. Now it's a completely different situation because now there's a come to Jesus meeting. Now there's a hard conversation that has to happen because there's been maybe a hard line drawn in the sand. There's been no communication for many years. So now, do you think that also adds to the number of years of your estrangement because you just don't want to go back for that hard conversation, the guilt trip, or whatever it is you think your parents going to show up with? And what do you think that looks like when that day that you decide to reach out or make the phone call or extend the olive branch or just a call to say, you hurt me, I'm angry, here's why? What are those thoughts that are going through your mind, if any? Or are you just like, it's not on my mind, I'm just working really hard trying to keep my head above water?
Well, if we're talking about like all that time has passed, can you guys hear me? Sorry, I may cut out.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that makes it the hardest because you don't know how that person's going to react, right? You don't know. Like for me, what I love about my best friend is that we can pick up even after not talking for weeks or like a month sometimes. Same with my sister. When she went off to school, we wouldn't talk for a month because we knew we were both really busy. We could just pick up where we left off. It didn't have to be awkward or weird or anything. It's just like, okay, let's catch up. That's how like I think it should be. It's like, hey, what's been happening with your life? Like, let's not focus on what happened. And like, when we're ready to like open up to why it happened, I think that's a whole different conversation, but it has to feel like there's still that openness to just like, I love you no matter what. I'm not going to bring it up if you're not ready to talk about it kind of thing. Has to be like initiated by the person, I think, that went no contact. It shouldn't be brought up by you. They have to be ready to talk about it. So if they know that it's like willing, because I always knew that about my mom. She was going to have willing open arms when I was ready to come back into contact. And so that's where I had no problem with just like, okay, I need my space kind of thing. And I know that with her now too, that she's not going to be like a little bit, she's like, oh, are you okay? Basically, I have to let her know I'm alive, right? But other than that, I just knew that like when I took that space for a couple of years, that it was really easy for me to come back because I knew she loved me no matter what.
How did you know that?
Just growing up, I guess. She would tell me that. I knew that I just did.
It wasn't because she reached out or once in a while sent you something that made you feel
Yeah.
that?
And I
Reminded
guess
you?
she was talking to my sister at the time and she was like, just tell Leah I love her. And she was just passing on that. And so I was like, oh, you can tell mom I'm not mad. I just need time. So
Okay, so what if that's not going on? So what if so I do the same thing with my oldest daughter that I talk to, you know, I love you so much and your sister too, please let her know. She sometimes feels like that puts her in the middle. She also feels like it's I don't think she does it because her sister's very distant with her as well. I mean, it's not like her sister's also warm and fuzzy with anyone in our family, her dad or sister, even friends, even friends have said that she's pushed everybody away. So can you comment on that?
give her space. Just like when you're feeling that way, there's nothing really anybody can do except wait. I think in that situation, but know that she's not alone. And I think you telling your daughter that and people like that she hasn't asked to go no contact, at least knowing like, hey, I'm here whenever you need me. And like I think a lot of us go through those phases where we just need to be alone or feel alone and sit in our loneliness however long. It's just like, you know, people are struggling with things, but you can't make them come out of that. They have to want to come out of that. So maybe she's just wanting to sit in her own stuff right now. And it's not a great place to be. I've been there, but I think she has to choose to come out of that. There's nothing like any one of you can do or anybody can do to make somebody, they have to choose. And when they choose, it's good to know the people that you can trust when you're ready to come out of that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I also think there could be another explanation in that she is happy. And she likes her world and the people in it and her husband, and she's in the honeymoon phase and she's got a new career that she's hopefully excited about. I haven't talked to her for many years, but I think she's trying to really create a life that she loves right now. And that doesn't involve maybe anything from her past because she wants it to be new and again, just everything that makes her feel good. And if there's any sort of hard work or heaviness with any of those relationships, perhaps she just doesn't want to do that right now.
And it doesn't mean forever, right? Just like I think if you are focused on your future and creating that new path for yourself, sometimes the past does feel too heavy to even deal with at the moment. And so, but it's always going to be there, whether she deals with it or not, or comes back. It's just like, and that's again, out of the control of the person who is being estranged. There's really, I think if you keep the door open, that's all we can really do. Just and see if those people come back into our lives. I know I've wanted to. Family is so important to me. And I was adopted. And so one of the things we mentioned earlier is like I have been asked not to contact, like our biological mother has reached out to us several times. And I have had siblings who said, like, I don't think you should do it. Like, don't contact her. And then myself, I felt like she doesn't deserve to know. So when one of my siblings did meet our biological mom, I'm like, don't tell her, don't talk about me.
Oh, that's big. Thanks for sharing that.
So do you feel like kind of the right or wrong for people to know how you're doing in life? And if they had nothing to do with it, then I don't think they have the right to know. They didn't contribute to your life somehow.
Do you know the reason she had to give you up for adoption?
Oh yeah, drugs and alcohol.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's important to hear for parents is just understanding. Also, there's a new statistic that statistically estrangement does not last a lifetime. kids do come back. And I think that's important to realize and understand and hear everything that we're discussing, because that truly is the work of the parent, is to keep that mom heart love always open, because we don't know how they're going to come back in our life. And regardless of what that looks like, if you are not completely healing yourself and an open door and open heart, open mind, it will not happen. Because now your child who wants to come back, let's just assume everybody wants to come back, but now let's say they make that attempt. And I'm thinking of several friends of mine who had done this, but their mothers were so angry and bitter that so much time has passed that they just couldn't do it. They couldn't open the door. And we even read a lot in the communities of, like, maybe not, they're not even angry anymore, but they're saying too much time's passed and I've moved on with my life and I don't think about you anymore. I don't want to think about you anymore. So sorry, too little, too late. You know, we're reading so many different things of different people's experiences.
Yeah, I advise against that. So
I
I
do
just
too.
think, I think time is an illusion, right? So I don't think anything could get in between Jillian and I's relationship. Even like, we've been mad at each other. We fought before. Same with my sisters. All of us have had issues where we don't agree and we have very different opinions on things. But even when we let the heat go up, I just like I said with my mom, I knew the door was always open. So to me, I had the time to heal through what I needed to heal from so I could go back. And I think that's important for us to keep open with almost any relationship, unless somebody has really harmed you and stuff. And so that's why I chose to go, to not let my biological mom back in my life. It's because, to me, she was somebody who gave me birth, and I got adopted into a family that showed me love and concern and care. And that's who I consider my mom. And though it hasn't been an easy journey in our relationship, but she's the one who taught me how to walk, because I didn't walk until I was 3. I came with a lot of, and she took the time to really, in those moments where I really needed her, to really foster my growth in my language. And I didn't talk or walk until I was 3 years old. So yeah. And she helped through all of that, because the doctor said I was just a failure to thrive, that I would lay there and die. And she was like, there's no way that's going to happen. So it's just crazy.
What a mom.
Yeah.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
so then I remember those incredible things about her, right? As much as she frustrates me. And then I have found things I can control, right? A lot of this talk started with control. I found the things I can control that would help us bond. So I can control that. One, she can't see. So if there's charges happening, I'm like, hey, what was this charge? And helping her take care of her finances. So we made some phone calls together to be like, hey, and those are the things I can control, because they were frustrating me that she was spending all this money that she didn't really have. So I'm like, okay, mom, let's figure out this stuff. So let's get on a call. And I was using 3-way calls, and we were bonding over talking about these things and what she really needed and what she didn't. And so she's coming around to at least communicating those things and trusting us. I think there's a big trusting, and when she's kind of lost her independence now, right, of being able to take care of herself. And so now it's I think she's moving into this phase where she has to give a little more trust in those kind of things, where she's not the same woman she used to be. And I think that's a really hard phase she's in right now, and why she's going through those guilt trips and stuff, because she is feeling lonely, even though she's not alone. So I think that's really hard for her, as she's transitioning and needing the help and not being the independent woman. She's been a single mother her whole life, taking care of 3 kids, 5 kids at one point, before the other ones grew up and moved out. So I think, and having a horse ranch. So I think now that she's all alone and it's just her, and she can't even read anymore, so her vision is going. And so I think she's just having that trouble acknowledging, accepting help, and trusting, right? Trusting the fact that have her best interest in heart.
And I think that's what's so hard for a lot of parents who are listening, because they feel like they have to go through all of that alone. And, you've carried yourself through your whole life, and all of the difficulties that go with life, and all of the mistakes that we all make because we're human. And now we get to the end of it all, and nobody's there. Nobody is there to help. Nobody is there for us to lean on or trust, you know. Cheryl, I don't know if you remember what Mimi called it. She just got on actually, but she said there's parents are now going through an orphan parent or something. Do you remember the term of that?
No.
Mimi? All right, we'll have to ask Mimi at the end when we have everybody come on, because she just logged on. But there's a new term for parents, like the orphaned parent or something, that will just die alone. Something to that effect. I don't remember, but
I've heard that before. I'll look it up here.
we've all encountered, a friend or somebody in our life who's high maintenance. And so what Aaliyah said of, like, she loves the friends in her life that they can just pick up where they left off with, even if so much time has gone by that they haven't even talked. And now we often step on other people's toes without realizing it. So we've stepped on a friend's toes, and now they've been stewing for months or years about how we stepped on their toes. And now they send us some email or something, or, a voice message that says, we really need to talk about what happened to us. And the other friend is thinking, what happened? Why are you so much work? Why is there a big come to Jesus conversation? Why can't we just pick up where we left off and just, let the past be the past? And I think that's, again, when it's our kids, we label it something different. But when it's us and we're going through all of these relationships and they're happening that way, it just feels differently when you're on one side of the playing field versus the other. When you're in control, you have more power in the relationship. When you feel more of like the victim, then you're the one that feels something was done to you. It feels like there's been such an injustice.
I know myself, I just have so much anxiety, like in, certain aspects of my life that I work on daily, and enough going on with my own family that I have to manage, my second marriage, stepdaughter, other family members, that with friendships, I just can't go through that with friendships as well. Even though some of my friends, long 30 years, 40 years are like sisters. But I really find myself, culling them out over time. But I think that's an age thing that we do with age as well. That I just, tend to go with the easy and the no stress, and where we don't have to have these huge conversations, that's kind of my take.
So is it possible that our kids feel that way?
Well, I would think so, especially, like in my case of the no contact, there won't even be people that are allowed to say, your mom still loves you, or, her arms are open, whenever you're ready. There isn't even that. So in my mind, it's always, how does she know? How will she know that I still love her? She might think that I'm angry. There's certain, vindictive things still directed at me 2.5 years later that, she might think, my mom must be really mad about that still, or, so that's something that I think about. I do, and then when I have doubts, I go back even from 2.5 years ago, and, every text was, I love you, I love you, I love you. Cards and the the pictures and the videos, just hoping that she can hold on to all of those and realize that, yes, the door will always be open.
I feel like Aaliyah addressed that already. Like, yeah, we still know, but like, there's just the boundary that needs to be set in order for us to heal. And like Lee said, the statistic is that not everybody's going to be estranged forever. Like, it's most likely not. And in my case right now, like, I know if I called my grandma right now on this call, I know exactly what she'd say. She'd say, "Hey, there's my pretty girl. Like, how are you?" But there's also the anxiety that I feel where it's like, I don't want to do this right now. Like, this feels like a lot. It feels, and I know that she loves me, and like, even if I was angry right now, I would know that she loves me and that the door would be open. And there was never that doubt. Like, there was never a doubt that my mom loved. I mean, there was some doubt there, but like in the end, after her passing, like, I never doubted that she still loved me. And I see that her efforts were like misplaced, if you will, but I knew that in her own way, she loved me the best she could with what she had. And, you know, unfortunately, that was in the form of needing someone else to fulfill her without seeing that, like, that I also needed her, and in a way, like, I know, like I said, my situation is completely different, but with my grandma, I know I can pick up the phone and she'll just be happy to hear from me. But I also don't have the strength or energy to like explain what's been going on because eventually we'll get into that. But right now it's just not that time for me. And it's not because I hate her and it's not because like she did anything wrong. It's just I right now need to keep my boundary to myself. And like even like I said, even if I was angry, I'd still know that her love for me was there. So don't like in your anxiety, don't let your anxiety be like, well, how does she know? How does she know? She'll never know unless I have to tell her. No, we do know. It's always there. It just takes a second of like, it's like a breather of just, I just need to breathe real quick.
That makes sense. So it's kind of in your healing process, just like in our healing process. We're not receptive to, in a healthy way anyway, to reconcile. And you have to get to the point where you're healthy enough to reconcile. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I just,
They know. They know because so many
Yeah.
years of raising them and living with them, they know. Yeah, you're right.
Well, I have a question for everybody, and I want to kind of spend a few minutes on this. So, as we know, we've had a lot of conversations about like cognitive distortions, and we've even talked about how our minds can conceive us, and that's very well known. We can't always trust what our minds are telling us. But however, we can 100% trust what our emotions are telling us if we can identify what the emotion is. Brene Brown's done a lot of research on this, and she says there's more than 80 emotions. There's a ton of emotions that we all experience in any given moment, any given day. But she says that the majority of people can only identify 3 emotions, and they are happy, sad, and angry. So that's where we all kind of navigate from our relationships and everything, is those 3 emotions. And without really even being able to call how we feel, maybe what it is. Maybe it's regret, maybe it's blame, maybe it's guilt, maybe it's trust, all of those things, letting go. So I want to share something with all of you. And I'm going to show you 2 slides. The first one is 4 different emotions. And they're on the consciousness scale from lower to higher. And then I want to show you the level of consciousness that goes with each of these emotions. If any of you also want to comment on, what comes up for you or how you feel about this from your perspective. So here are 4 emotions. So keep in mind, these are the emotions that we experience when we're at a certain level of consciousness. The next slide I'll show you is the level of consciousness with them. So here are the 4 emotions at that fall in different levels of consciousness.
Mm.
And we go a lot into this in our online community with these 4 levels. You see from the bottom is level 1 and then up to level 4. So what is your guess as far as like blaming? So blaming is an emotion, which is interesting. So if you're blaming someone's life, whatever, for being other than it is, what do you think is that first level of consciousness that would go with that? It's like we're blaming parents, we're blaming the economy, we're blaming anything, just life being other than what it is. What's it doing to us? Because blame is the emotion that we're experiencing. Where is it coming from? But also, how do you compartmentalizing it? So blame is an emotion. It's not something that you're doing to somebody else. Blame is the emotion that you're experiencing, that you're internalizing, that's creating your point of vibrational frequency, activating the law of attraction. And I'm going to tell you what the level of consciousness is with the 4 of these things in a minute. But just off the top of your head, when you see blame, what comes up?
Anger, hurt.
Guilt.
Why guilt?
Because I feel like if I'm being blamed for something, like, then I've done something wrong. And even if I don't know what it is, I feel guilty about it.
Okay, what about when you're blaming somebody else?
Like disappointment or like shame in them, maybe even like some anger, but mostly it's I would feel disappointment if if I'm blaming my cat for knocking something over, I'm not gonna like I'm gonna scold her, but I'm just gonna be like disappointed, like, why would you knock off my plant, dude? It cost me like $30.
Yeah. Sue said victim, shame, focusing on external circumstances. Yeah. Some of the chat comments.
When I think of blame, I think of like assigning fault, and it's more of an action for me than an emotion.
But scientifically, it's an emotion. It's an emotion that we experience. And that's not from Brene Brown. That's from a couple other psychologists and scientists that have come up with that. I was just sharing Brene Brown only being able to identify the 3 emotions. Okay, so the second one, hate. Hate is an emotion that we experience when we're doing something. So
Hurt.
it's what we're internalizing. Cheryl?
Hurt. When I feel anger or anger is directed at me, I think of hurt. I'm hurt, the other person's hurt.
When I think of
Yeah,
hate, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Nope, go ahead. I was going to share the comments.
When I think of hate, I think of passion. Like, I think that like anger and like I've shared this before, like I think of like passion and anger and love are so close because they feel very similar. You have that fire in you, and like I feel heat when I think of hate. Like when I think about those years after I didn't talk to my mom and like everything happened, I was so freaking angry. I hated her. And like anytime she was brought up, like it just reignited that fire, and I felt it like in my core, not just like in my extremities where you could feel like really strong emotions. No, I felt it to the core of my being. I feel like almost in my soul sometimes I was so freaking angry. I hated her. But now I recognize that it's because like I loved her so much that I was like, just let me back, choose me back.
And that's interesting too, because hate feels a lot better than being the victim. We feel like we have more control when we're hating something versus being blamed for something. So we'll choose hate over blame. Yeah, that was good. Well, and we'll come back to that in just a minute. That was very interesting that you said that. Hate makes me feel sad. Blame to me says you're denying a part in the circumstances. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, what about forgiveness?
Empathy.
It's like freedom, like as opposed to that like fiery passion I'm feeling when I'm like, God, I hate that person. Like, for example, I ran into, you guys all know my like struggles with the ex partner that I separated from. I ran into his friend the other day, and I was just like, I forgive you. Like, you guys kind of made my life hell for a little bit, but I really wish you well. And the dreams about them stopped. Like, worrying about like running into them stopped because that band-aid was ripped off. And I was just like, huh, I actually kind of don't care. And it's not that I don't care about what happened. I don't care about holding on to this anymore.
Mm.
It's peace, right? Is that what you said? It's
Yes.
yeah.
Totally.
It's not quite peace, but yeah, you're on the right path. Forgiveness is the gift for my own peace and has very little to do with the other. Forgiveness says understanding that we all fail sometimes. Okay, and so the fourth one, bliss. If you're emotionally experiencing bliss, what's going on?
Cheryl, say peace.
Yeah. Well, and she looked peaceful. She's like rocking in the
She's like,
sunshine.
You know
okay,
why?
right.
I was just thinking, for me, bliss is opening up to nature. It's just that feeling that I experience, lately. It's yes, it's definitely peace and being one with my surroundings and nature.
Good answers, everyone. Yeah, we got happy, open, zen. Okay, now let's look at the level of consciousness with the emotion. Okay, so when you feel guilty about something, you blame another. That's interesting. So when we feel guilty, we blame. And now let's just think about why all parents must be getting blamed right now. And with everything that was shared by Aaliyah and Jillian, with how they're just trying to get their lives together and keep their head above water. And in their generations, that bar is high because they see all of the Bitcoin millionaires and all of these influencers that are doing absolutely nothing to make all of this money. And that is just in their face, constantly raising that bar so high. We just, the rest of us didn't have that. So it could very well be your child blaming you on some subconscious level, because level one is subconscious. Your child blaming you, saying, it's your fault that I'm not measuring up in the world. Now, level two, when we're angry at anything, what we're cultivating in us is hate. We're experiencing hate as an emotion. And this is where we manifest a disease if we don't do something with this, because we're cultivating this. Level one is the victim. Level two is the narcissist. And level two is the control that we were talking about today. When we're in level one and we don't feel like we have any control, or we've been living in our parents' house our whole life, we move into level two. Maybe we get angry because we're just so hell-bent on getting control of our lives so that somebody is no longer controlling us. And this is where the narcissist falls. And there's something to understand with level two is when we see the narcissist in somebody else, it's in us. So if you don't want to be in level two and you don't want to be a narcissist, the only response that you'll have with a narcissist should be namaste. Namaste means the God in me sees the God in you. That should be your only response. Because if you're seeing a narcissist in another one or calling somebody out, it's in you. Level three implies that if you're on the level of acceptance, then you have forgiven. It's not acceptance, slammed the door, moved on. And this is a very active emotion. It's not passive. It's not, yep, I did my forgiveness work. I'm done. I'm moving on. I'm finished. It's a very active, ongoing emotion and process. And then you guys are right. Level four, bliss is that peace. Absolutely. If you're living a blissful life, then you're experiencing some peace. And it's important for all of us to find those times in our life where we can experience the reprieve from those lower levels. Comments on any of that? Oh, one other thing I wanted to point out too. So we talked originally about, is estrangement letting go or is it total control? So level two would be the total control. This yellow line, this midway point, that's where letting go falls in. That's where trusting a process falls into place. And it's also just where we land at certain times in our life. Meditation can get us to that level. Going into level 3 really requires an openness of your heart, a deep level of healing yourself. And it doesn't have anything to do with anybody else. That's why all of our work is always an inside job. And the most important relationship in our lives is the one with ourselves, because at the end of the day, that's the person we have to live with. That's the person we have to be okay with. Okay, one final question. Normally I ask for a message to your generation. Today I want to know, what do you think your generation gets wrong?
Mine, but parenting. I think that we're so comfortable because of the way that we were raised. We're scared to be like our parents, or like, maybe it was happy and you still like, there's so many people I see just handing their toddlers or their babies like a screen to keep them entertained, and I'm terrified by that. Like the reading comprehension has gone down so low. Like I'm not active on TikTok, but like I'll see things where like some guy didn't even know how to say uses. He said us's. What is us's? And I was like, oh my God. Where are we going right now, guys?
I hear you, Jillian. That is scary.
Like I really value like my education. Like I'm really excited to go into the academy in August because I'm like, oh, more school. I don't know. Maybe I'm a weirdo, but like, oh man, I'm so scared. Some people haven't even read a book.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're getting wrong, is like not putting our emphasis on not only our education, but the future education. And just kind of like relying on like, oh, they'll figure it out, or like this video will show them.
So we've talked a lot about parental abuse and how us just yelling at our kids was abusive, regardless of how much you have going on in your life. If you yelled at your kids, that was abusive. So based on what you just said, is it abusive to just put your kid in front of, hand them a phone, plug them in front of the video games so that you don't have to deal with them, so that, is that going to be considered abusive? Is it abusive?
In my opinion, like I freaking love video games. I think there's a really healthy balance. Like I could spend 8 hours playing Stardew Valley because it calms me down and like also it's fun. But I could also spend 8 hours reading a book. Like life is about balance. And maybe like 8 hours of one thing consuming my day when I'm off is maybe excessive, but that's my day off. I get to choose it. I'm an adult. I think that maybe in the future we'll see like the definition of what neglect is really, really mold into whatever form it takes, and that might be it, especially because like now we're focused on like the mental health and stuff and like gentle parenting, but like where does gentle parenting stop and like actual parenting begin? In ways that like if my child is screaming for their iPad, I'm probably going to let them scream it out, or just like really reinforce that boundary of like you can't always have like a screen in front of you to distract you. Read, get outside, play, do whatever. I don't know, I'm not a parent, but I think that we could probably see it morph into something like that. But I mean, time will tell, and maybe like things will change. But I think like maybe in a way that is beginning to morph into being neglectful.
I agree. I think it's, especially for younger children, I think it's a form of neglect because younger children don't need that screen in front of them. They need human interaction. They need to see a role model. They need to see things happening. And if they just get a screen shoved in front of them, then I don't think that's healthy. And then the one thing I think my generation neglects is eating dinner together, like sitting down at a table, eating dinner together instead of grabbing your dinner and putting on a Netflix show or something like that. So that's where I think when I moved to my best friend's house, I encouraged them to sit down and eat dinner together. And they're like, oh, this is so nice. And they continued to do that even after I moved out. And same with my brother. When I moved in with him for a little while and sat with them, I was like, oh, and they all sat in front of the TV. And that was so strange to me during dinner time. I was like, let's sit down and like have a conversation. How was your day? And so
without your phone there.
Without your phone there. Yeah. And I've just seen people go to a restaurant and hand their kid their phone, and then they just sit there on their phone and not involved in anything. So I think that's something my generation is doing wrong. I think it's so important to have a meal together, talk about your day, and have that time connection, because we're so busy all throughout the day and we're in front of screens. Like, I'm in front of a screen all day for my job. So it's nice to unplug, turn off my phone, and sit at a dinner and eat and see how you are.
Generation is not willing to learn anymore. They, kind of become stagnant and don't want to look within, don't want to learn new things, or have trouble really listening to another side. So it's something I myself try to do a lot more. But I think the learning, it's like, oh, I can't learn the internet, stuff, and oh, I can't do this and I can't do that. But just being willing to open up and not be stagnant or apathetic. I think that's where my generation could do a bit better.
Dr. Ruth, back to you. What do you think your generation is getting wrong? What are they underestimating?
Oh, underestimating. It took me a while to come up with something that we're doing wrong. And one thing that I think is a pretty common theme is self-care. They're not so much into self-care, like mental health self-care.
It wasn't a generational thing. It's so odd for, I think, a boomer to want to care for themselves, though. I mean, where is it coming from, do you think?
Not knowing how to, maybe judgment from previous generations. Like, we couldn't have anything wrong with this. I grew up in a household like that. High expectations. We had to have a lot of drive and get things done and then relax and reward yourself. But, learning to do it along the way has been hard.
What do you think about this? Last time you mentioned Marsha Linehan's work, and I just bought her memoir, and it was fantastic, and I highly recommend everybody read it. It was just fantastic. So she's your generation. She brought up something that was very interesting. If you acted out, or if you talked too much about your problems, or you were depressed, guess what? You were sent away to the funny farm. That was a real fear, was being sent away in a straitjacket and being drugged in a facility during that time. And that's something that we've never brought up. So, I mean, for the younger generation, say, well, why didn't you get into mental health and healing yourself and doing all of these things? Because it could have landed you in a straitjacket in a mental facility.
Yeah, that's what mental health care was. Yeah.
You didn't dare admit that you had any problems, that you hated your parents,
that you were angry. I couldn't be
you were angry.
Yeah.
Not allowed to be angry ever. I think what my generation is getting wrong too is that we think now we have to suffer, and it comes on the heels of what you said about our own self-care. And I think what I'm hearing a lot of estranged parents who want to join the community, but their hesitation has been they're just trying to forget about it. They're just trying to pretend that the pain does not exist. You don't have to suffer. Just because your kids are not talking to you or haven't talked to you for many years, you don't have to live in this constant regret, sadness, heaviness. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. And we're glad that you guys joined us and were willing to listen. Thank you so much.